I just love how you, as a child, God gives us these dreams and we act them out. And it's always been a desire for you to lead in worship and with music. And, you were older, you got involved, but then you got down a different road and rebellion and pride set in. And I know a lot of us are very familiar with that. The teenage years, just getting older, we go a different way. Can you share a little bit of your story of how you just got off a different path?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so, it's one of those things where I think that sometimes people think if you grow up in church, or even if you didn't grow up in church, if you're just in church, that means that, you shouldn't struggle with anything, or that, everything goes away. But, in fact, a lot of times it can be kind of the opposite of that, because of the knowledge that you have, because of the background that you have. It's one of those things where you kind of have to, put in that extra effort to make sure that you're, walking out that talk that you're talking about. And so for me, especially like you said, in those teenage years, and it's so common, but this kind of mindset starts to develop of like, I'm gonna prove something to the world, and I got this chip on my shoulder, and I'm gonna show you. And especially coming out of just kind of the area that I grew up in and stuff like that, it was almost like a cool thing to have a chip on your shoulder. And so that really made it like interesting. And so for me, growing up in church, you have the family there and all of that. But when that's all that I knew, something about me, just for some reason, I can't even tell you what sparked it, but just like wanted to push that and wanted to challenge that, and like, oh, well, why does it have to be this way? Why does it have to be this way? And so, that attitude right there kind of leads to you making a lot of mistakes, not just hurting yourself through it, but hurting other people around you, because it turns into this me first mentality. And because you feel like you have something to prove, you are willing to do whatever you need to in order to feel like you proved that. And sometimes that even means hurting yourself, hurting other people. It's like this stubbornness that really just sinks into you. And I really believe that pride is one of those things that it's such a sneaky sin, because it makes you like justify your own actions. And so even when your actions are wrong, even when they're misleading people, even when they're hurting people, you justify them, because the whole issue of pride is that you have to be right all the time. And so it kind of just continues to snowball on itself until you've just ended up in this huge mess where like nobody likes you, nobody trusts you, nobody wants you around. But it really is one of those things where you can't blame anybody else. It kind of all falls back on you because you put yourself in that situation.
Sean, I just appreciate your transparency with pride, because I think it's a hidden sin a lot of us we deal with, we don't want to talk about, but it's just beautiful to see how God, through your walk, He's just in that surrendered place, is getting you to where you are today. So tell us, like fast forward, how did you get to the place of where you are today with singing and the music that you do?
Man, so fast forwarding for sure, it was I had kind of felt like, oh man, like I need to tear away from this. This is, I have just long story short, I had just hurt myself and hurt so many other people so many times, and I feel terrible about it, broken down, like, God, I don't want to be this person anymore. This isn't like if I'm here and I'm in ministry and I'm representing you, I'm not really representing you, because, people have a bad experience of you because of me, because of how I treat people, because of how I put myself first. And so it was that thing of, if I'm going to represent you, God, show me how to represent you, and, tear me away from these things that are keeping me from doing that. And, so for me, it was really in that season where I wanted to, get into that next gen pastoring, and, kind of using my experiences and using my wrong choices to help guide, somebody else into not making those same choices. It was in that season where I realized, okay, if I'm going to be trusted in leadership, then I need to make sure that I live the life that is worthy of being trusted in leadership. How would I respond if one of my kids saw me outside of church? How am I treating people? How am I acting? How am I carrying myself? Am I the person that would, if a kid told me, hey, I want to be just like you, would I be, proud to show them how to do that? Or would I be the person that says, oh, no, no, don't be like me, trust me? It's one of those things where that responsibility kind of ups, and you really realize that, you need to carry yourself differently, because you represent God and you're showing others how to represent God through their life. And So that was just that huge thing. And I really do believe that, ministry and even the past experience that I had with growing up in church and stuff, I think it all came back together, and God reminded me, like, hey, you are not being who I created you to be. It's time for you to start being that again. And so that got me into the season of leadership and being the next gen pastor and everything. And when it came to the music side of things, man, that was something that through all those seasons, it had always been something that I wanted to do. And it started in hip hop music because every teenager wants to be a rapper. And so in my teenage years, I wanted to be a rapper, and so we started at hip hop. And the music just kind of progressed through there, but nothing ever seemed to pan out. And I really do attribute that to a lot of the prideful stuff, because I think that my pride got me into bad business situations. It got me around, some wrong circles, and it got me carrying myself the wrong way and being the guy that people didn't want to work with. And so once that heart started to shift, one thing that I really decided is, yes, I really want to be able to do music ministry, but with this new humble heart that God had given me, it was, God, I want to do music ministry, but I promise you that I'm going to give my 100% to the people that I'm serving, even if it's not music ministry. And so when it came to, the next gen pastor role, doing video edits for the church, serving at special events, anything like that, it was always God first, people first, and making sure that that was a priority. And it was kind of through that season that God fine-tuned me and said, okay, now you're starting to figure it out. Now you're developing this mentality that I can trust, this lifestyle that I can trust. You're putting others first, you're treating others better, and you're making sure that you are uplifting and not taking away from the people around you. And so I really feel like God would not allow those doors to be open until I had gone through the trials that he wanted me to go through, because I had to learn, I had to be ready for what it was that I was praying for.
There's actually a phrase I know that God laid on your heart that you want to share that really is, an umbrella and really speaks to your heart of your music and your ministry. Can you share it with us?
Absolutely. So that phrase is, we didn't come this far just to come this far. And what that means is that God gives purpose to everything. And sometimes we get this tendency to, when we talk about God's purpose for our life, we only look forward and we look into the future of what God's going to do for us. But, when we say we didn't come this far just to come this far, it's a reminder to not only look forward, but to look to the past too, and to look at who you were versus who you are now and what God has done through all of that. And when you realize that God can transform your life, first of all, he gets the glory, but it also, makes you comfortable to share the things that you've been through, because your story can impact somebody else's story who's just a few chapters behind you. And so, if I can take my story, the things that I struggled with, the things that God pulled me out of, and I can share them with someone in the next generation, and that goes for everybody. Like, your story, no matter what you went through, your story can change the course of somebody's life because of what God's done for you. You can share with them the lessons that God has taught you. And so, people don't realize, sometimes we have this tendency to be afraid of our stories, to be ashamed of what we've done. But, when you're living your life for God now, I don't care about who I was, because God cares about who I am now. And not only that, God is going to use who I was to change who people are. And so your story can save somebody from a life of addiction. Your story could save, a bad relationship. Your story can save wrong choices. Your story can do all of that and ultimately give glory back to God. And that just comes to show us we didn't go through all of that just for the sake of going through all of that, because that is still going to give God glory, and that is still going to save somebody in the future. And so when we say we didn't come this far just to come this far, yes, there's absolutely a future that God has for us, and it is beautiful, but he can also repurpose that past and make it beautiful, not only for us, but for the people around us. So then that story becomes not just about us, it ultimately becomes God's story.